everybody, this is Frankie Abbruzzino, and I'm back with the Scoop Radio Show. And fortunately, we have an excellent guest today. This is a former city commissioner with the city of Sarasota, Paul Caragiulo, and he is fresh off his win yesterday, and he is now the new county commissioner. I think it's for District Number 2. Paul, are you there?
I am here.
Paul, congratulations on your successful win.
Yeah, not former yet. However, I'm still going to be at the city until the 17th of November.
17th of November. And when do you take over as the county commissioner?
The 18th of November.
Okay, great.
Yeah. They give me a nice, about a 12-hour break. Actually, about 9 hours. But anyway.
You know what? First, before I have a couple questions to ask you, but I thought I'd give you an opportunity first just to tell us what your plans are, what your ambitions are with this new role, and what you hope to achieve.
Well, happy to do that, Frankie. I just wanted to first say that I want to thank everyone who got out to the polls, and certainly appreciate the support. We had a really great team put together, and it's been a lot of work. It's been a long process, 15 months, and I'm just absolutely I couldn't be happier with the result, and I think I'm actually ready to start right now, but but there'll be plenty to do. I mean, basically in the shorter term, as we know, we have some changes that were made to our land use policy, and that have to sort of be finished up with some legal definitions and designations and practices that are going to be put in place, and how we grow and what our expectations are, and that's going to be where I'm going to be sitting there, sort of making those decisions, and it's going to require lots of listening and lots of input, and hopefully we can get to some reasonable conclusion.
Oh, great. Now, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and it's going to relate some to the city, some to the county level. And the first one, this is a recorded show, and I sent you over the story about the chicken.
Yeah.
And I wanted just to get your thoughts. I already went through it, and I did my diatribe here. What are your thoughts on people being able to house these chickens within the county?
Well, the issue, to put it sort of in the context where my interaction with the issue would be was, I don't know if you recall, but a couple of years ago we had this issue come to the city of Sarasota. It was actually just prior to my getting elected to the city commission in 2011. It was, but I was pretty well connected to the issue that was being put forth by this group called Cluck, which did a lot of work and a lot of outreach and a lot of research. Subsequently, when it passed, and it was a fairly volatile discussion, as we know that there are very many things in the city of Sarasota that evolve into volatile discussions. No, it's not a remarkable issue in that capacity, but a couple of years later, because there was a sunset provision in that original ordinance that we just extended, and it seems that we're not really having any problem regulating this activity. It was really has amounted to little or no effect, if you ask me. I mean, I'm certainly not aware of any serious issues that have come up because of people housing chickens.
Right.
You know, I personally, maybe it's my sort of interest in agrarian food issues and these types of things. I don't have any problem with it. You know, I think that if you have regulations in place that could mitigate the effect, you can look at this as just about any other land use issue, or or any other issue. The way you look at regulating sound or noise or anything else. I mean, you have to sort of look at what you can do, what's reasonable, and sometimes you got to roll the dice with some of these things. But I personally was surprised to find out, believe it or not, that in the county you had to have either open use zoning or agricultural zoning, being that typically in certain areas of the county anyway, you have larger properties that might, where it might not come as a surprise that people have chickens, but apparently it's pretty heavily regulated. So that's, I think, where the rubber's gonna hit the road is can we come up with some reasonable conclusion how this could be done? I mean, you are talking about the unincorporated area of the county, obviously.
Yeah, the unincorporated.
Cities to be on their own. So.
Yeah, and you know what? I basically echoed what you said is why can't we put some kind of restrictions in place, some kind of regulations, and see where it goes, maybe do a temporary thing. And, you know, they have been there for 2 years on 5 acres, and all of a sudden it's a big problem, which...
I will say this. I have never spoken to these folks. I'm not familiar with the real significant details of their case, and I don't really, not that I don't trust the media, but, I wouldn't want to comment substantively on their specific issue. What I do know is that there's a pretty wide spectrum with how people feel about what, quote-unquote, affects them when it comes to, neighbors and things like that. Some folks can get riled up about just about anything, and some folks are very, very tolerant. So when you go and you say, you try to judge what the effect of a particular issue is like this one, it's very, very difficult. And some folks have a very low threshold for, I don't know, like being...
For any of this chicken business.
Inconvenienced or stuff like, you know what I mean? It's like many things.
Well, let's move on to another thing because I'm short on time. One thing I did want to talk to you about, and since you're going to be on the city until the 17th, is this latest controversy with the signs. I got to tell you, I get what the business owners are trying to achieve, and I appreciate it. And I think they went a little too far by saying 97% of these guys are on drugs if you give them the money. I think they sort of sparked the controversy with that sign.
Let me say this without getting into the details because I know they're going to chime in legally, and it's like anything else. It's a very emotional issue. That little tidbit, if you will, or that utilization of that fact it's actually 93%. From what I understand from Dr. Marmot, 93% gets used for three things. It's either drugs, alcohol, or sex. Sex is the third one, which is not on the sign, but who wants to advertise that? And there have been this sort of strategy, if you will, has been utilized elsewhere, and it does help people sort of put it in perspective and say, look, do I really want to get in the situation of handing someone cash when if I feel like I want to help, there's probably a better way to do that. Now, that being said, when you venture into the area of placing the signage, you I think the intent is pure, absolutely, but you venture into a risky area. I know that other places have sort of, and this has been merchant driven by in other locations because that's who are being affected typically. Whether you have signs in your window, whether you have something in the store or whatever. I mean, there are ways to get to raise awareness without latching things to a signpost. And the reason why I say that is what's ironic about this is the city, we just very recently went through sort of this policy to do something about the proliferation of all types of signs. Traffic, I mean, it's just like if you go out in the street, you're like, how many different things telling me what to do am I going to experience today? So it's ironic that this was kind of utilized when we're trying to, I thought make an effort to declutter what's on the street. But
and I didn't realize the city was already looking at that. And I'm hoping that the city isn't going to be like Venice and spend $30,000 on a consultant to come out and tell them what they should or shouldn't do with their sign policy. But hold that thought 1 second, Paul. What I'd like you to do is think about that. We got a hard break coming up in about 10 seconds. And I'll let you address that question about the consultant, and then we'll touch on a couple other stuff like impact fees.
Sure.
All right, thanks a lot, Paul. We'll be right back, folks. Hey everybody, you're back with Frankie Abbruzzino with the Scoop Radio Show, and I have on the air with us Paul Caragiulo. He is the current City of Sarasota Commissioner, and he just won election as the new County Commissioner starting November 18th. And Paul, we left off discussing the whole consultant issue and my concern with consultants coming in and having to pay them to tell us how to create a sign policy.
Well, yeah, and to be clear, the consultant, put it this way, the entire recommendation, basis of the recommendation, or the actual chunk of the recommendation, isn't about creating signs to stop panhandling. It's a component, one of 25 or 27 things, one of which is to try to raise awareness to get people to realize that panhandling is the most common form of enabling the behavior that we're trying to stop.
Right.
So, that doesn't mean necessarily you put a sign on the sidewalk, but there are other ways that you can do that.
Okay. Now, one other issue that I did want to discuss, because to me it seems confusing, and this is Bayfront 2020, and I sent you an email asking you how, basically where can I get some information on the cost for the last proposal that was done, I think in 2007. Yeah,
right. That was something called the Cultural District Master Plan.
Yeah, and I'm wondering why we're not utilizing that. And then also, if you could, during our last interview, I something about an Irish company where they come into the picture, because it's a little confusing to me.
Oh, yeah, that's sort of a separate issue that had to do with title on the Quay property.
Okay,
it was actually an Irish banking, basically the regulatory banking authority. I don't know, like maybe FDIC would call it or something like that. Well, it was the agency that regulates Irish banks. When they had so many of them fail during the economic collapse, this government entity then got control of the property, and it was sort of difficult to, from what I understand, gain some type of a transactional opportunity or control to pass the title off. I think that's all, to my knowledge, all been fixed, because there are, I guess, companies actively trying to purchase that property. If they haven't done so already, we wouldn't know until after the fact anyway, because the city has little or nothing to do with that.
So, on the Bayfront 2020, why wouldn't they utilize that old master plan that I'm assuming we spent a pretty penny coming up with? It took 4 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the figure was. I want to say it was probably somewhere around $500,000 or maybe a little more, but don't
quote you.
Or maybe we could say today in today's dollars. I don't know, but it's not that it's totally been shredded, because the bones of that is sort of what the demand for infrastructure for a large project would be, which would sewers, sidewalks, utilities, all that kind of stuff that typically could be done with some type of a redevelopment effort, and then your private development comes in after that, if there is, so whether it's not for profit, or whatever else. I mean, it's not like it's totally useless or anything. It's just now this discussion that's going on right now is sort of fixated more on what would the uses, if any, what would they be, what would they look like, for example. Do you have the orchestra involved? Do you have boat involved? Do you have some type of a hotel? Well, this has been taken on. Any hotel or conference component is sort of, in some strange turn of events, unilaterally the city commission says, look, don't talk to us about this. This is, sort of the way they have been acting on several things, but this is a very good example of, these are things we don't want to talk about, one of which is having any kind of a conference or hotel amenity on the Bayfront. But, it's basically, from what I understand, it's going to be a bunch of folks from different organizations or interests coming together to come up with a vision, quote unquote, for the Bayfront.
So it's a good thing.
I'm sorry?
So it's a good thing then.
Yes, ultimately, I think it's a good thing. I don't know, believe it or not, what the time frame is, it's unclear to me who the actual group is, because there is no actual group. Visit Sarasota is pretty much driving the facilitation of these public outreach sessions, but I don't know that there's an actual committee specifically, and I wouldn't know who's on the committee. it's probably strange for people to hear a public official say that, but it's, you know, hey, we're going to get together to discuss the Bayfront. You know, is a meeting this date? I don't know who's driving any of it, but you know.
Well, let me try to squeeze in one more question, okay?
Sure.
And this is we're going to stay along the lines of development with 2050. And I don't know if you caught last weekend's show. I had Kathy Artunes on, and she crunched some numbers, and she said, "Hey, look, in Northport, they're adding about 70,000 new houses, and the vacancy rate, I don't know, 50, 60%, whatever it is." And she's got a concern that there's overdevelopment due to lax controls with this 2050 and everybody wanting to develop. And one of my concerns is the impact fees, where we're possibly discounting them too much, and then us, the current taxpayers, are going to have to pay for those schools, those roads, those sewer systems. And I was wondering if you could, we got about 3 minutes.
That gets into a very complicated discussion, which I'm happy to do.
Can you do it in 3 minutes?
Or we'll break it up into 3 shows, because let's just say you can. It's very easy to get people's attention if you say your hair is on fire with this one issue. I will say this: impact fees. I don't personally. I would prefer that the county dealt with impact fees the way some other places do, which was to basically assign them geographically. For example, without getting into fiscal neutrality and all that other stuff, at the end of the day, you're going to collect money for services. What that number should be that you should collect, I believe, should depend on what area of the county that it is. I believe that if you want to incentivize development in one area, then perhaps you can have a lower impact fee. If you want to disincentivize, which I think is perfectly fine if that's the will of the community and the decision that's made, then you make impact fees higher or more cost prohibitive or whatever. To sort of to paint this with one big brush is probably not going to get us where we need to go.
But isn't that what they're doing now? It seems like they're saying, okay, this is basically the way it's going to be, and there's
no. It's basically one fee, no matter where you are, and I think that's. I don't know. I mean, this is just my opinion. This is not.
I actually like your idea. I think that's a good idea.
Well, yeah, because then you see. Honestly, Frankie, what happens with all this stuff is most of the folks, with all due respect, who reel off this stuff are speaking in a political capacity. This is about planning, not about politics. We got to stop utilizing these terms and these structural nuances that mean very little to day-to-day citizens, and getting into the planning part of it. You know what I mean? There's the screaming about it, and there's the real work trying to remediate a situation if one exists. Right. Do I think that development should pay for itself? I think everything should pay for itself. I mean, conceptually, but what does that mean? You get into a whole different world when you start, speculating about what somebody's going to build and what this. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to build something if there's a demand for someone to buy it.
Exactly.
That's typically how it works. 70,000 units in Northport. I would say that Northport has to be okay with that because the county doesn't regulate the land use in the city of Northport.
Yep, and on that note, Paul, I got to cut you off because we're coming to the end of the show, and I can certainly have you back, and we could try to. I know that was a loaded question. I threw a bunch out there.
I would happy to spend as much time as you can bear on the issue. So.
All right, well, I appreciate you coming in, and again, congratulations on your new position, and I wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, folks, remember, I do have a daily show. It is at theuncensoredreport.com, where I talk about national alternative news and international. Check that out. Also, remember to visit my sponsor, philsgang.com. And this is it for Frankie. I will see you next week.